Gold is one of the strangest things humans ever agreed to value. You cannot eat it. You cannot drink it. It will not shelter you from rain. And yet, across thousands of years, people have treated it as serious wealth, something worth guarding, burying, gifting to kings, and later locking behind bank vault doors. So when someone asks, who discovered gold? The honest answer is, no single person did. Gold was found again and again by many hands in many places because nature sometimes leaves it where ordinary eyes can see it. Unlike most metals, gold can appear as a native metal. Bright flakes and small nuggets in riverbeds and soil, already metallic, already yellow, already heavy. Long before writing, someone could scoop sand from a stream, wash the lighter grains away, and notice stubborn yellow pieces that stayed at the bottom because they were heavier than sand and brighter than anything around them. The first discovery was not scientific, it was sensory. Gold catches light. It feels dense in the palm. It looks different from stone. And it does something that must have felt like magic. It does not rot, it does not rust, it does not turn dull the way many other metals do. A bead made from gold could outlast the person who shaped it. That permanence is not just chemistry, it is a message. Archaeology gives us hints about how early that message mattered. One of the most famous early concentrations of worked gold comes from the Varna cemetery near the Black Sea, dated roughly to the 5th millennium BCE. Graves there contained striking amounts of gold objects, suggesting that early societies were already using gold to signal rank and authority. That is not the first moment humans saw gold, but it is clear evidence that gold became meaningful early, meaningful enough to be worked into ornaments and placed in graves as a visible sign of hierarchy. From there, the story spreads the way trade spreads. If one community values a shining metal that lasts, nearby communities learn to value it too, because value is contagious. Merchants compare what each side respects. Rulers exchange gifts that signal status. Gold travels well as a symbol because it is compact, beautiful, and hard to imitate convincingly. A sack of grain spoils. A herd can die. A gold ornament can cross deserts. But the real puzzle is not discovery. It is power. Why did gold become expensive? And who named it gold? Start with the name. In English, gold comes from Old Germanic speech, related words across languages that point to the same basic idea: yellow, shining, glowing. The name is not a theory. It is a description. Early speakers named what they saw. Other civilizations used their own words, often tied to light. The Romans used aurum, linked to glow and dawn, which is why the chemical symbol for gold is O. Across languages, the pattern is consistent. Gold was named for its brightness. That tells you something important. Before gold was money, it was perception. It stood out. Now, what made it expensive? First, scarcity that requires effort. Gold is not the rarest substance on earth, but it is rare in the way that matters for value. It is difficult to obtain in large amounts without work. Even when you find it in a riverbed, it appears in small pieces. To gather enough for serious display, you must spend time, labor, and skill. Later, to mine it, you must dig, crush rock, and refine. That labor cost is a natural limiter. If something is easy to produce, it struggles to hold value. Gold resists cheap mass production because new supply usually demands real digging and real time. Second, durability. A good store of value must survive time. Gold resists corrosion, which means it can carry wealth forward without decaying. That matters more in a world without modern institutions. If you fear drought, war, or theft, you need wealth that can hide, travel, and reappear unchanged. Gold is suited to that role. Third, divisibility and remaking. Gold can be melted and reshaped. If you need smaller pieces, you can cut it. If you need a new form, you can recast it. That flexibility allows gold to shift roles: ornament, tribute, dowry, savings, coin. Many valuables cannot do that without losing their identity. Fourth, recognizability. A money that cannot be recognized is not useful. Gold's color, density, and luster made it easier to identify than many alternatives. Over time, societies built practical tests around that recognition. They weighed gold on small scales. They rubbed it on touchstones to compare streak and softness. They learned the sound of real metal, the feel of real weight, the look of real shine. Each improvement in testing reduced fraud, and each reduction in fraud widened the circle of people willing to accept gold from strangers without long arguments. One more force made gold expensive: coordination. Once a community chooses a yardstick, everyone benefits by using the same one. Traders. Price goods faster, debts are clearer, and taxes are simpler. That creates a network effect. The more people accept gold, the more useful it becomes, and the more useful it becomes, the more people accept it. This loop can lift a material above equally pretty rivals, even if those rivals are rare for centuries, even across borders. These properties explain why gold was attractive. They do not fully explain why it became powerful. Power comes from institutions and habits. Gold became powerful because it solved a trust problem that every society eventually faces. How do you store value and settle obligations when you cannot always trust people, rulers, or circumstances? In early economies, trade begins with barter and local credit. You exchange goods or you keep track of favors. That works in small communities where relationships are stable. But as trade expands across villages, across regions, across languages, trust becomes costly. You cannot know every trader. You cannot chase every debt. You need something that acts as a bridge between strangers. This is where precious metals rise. They become neutral ground, value that does not depend on personal relationships, and among metals, gold is unusually suited to becoming that neutral ground. At first, gold's role is often ceremonial and elite. It marks kings, temples, and prestige. But prestige is not just vanity. Prestige is social technology. It tells the world who commands resources, who can mobilize labor, who can reward allies. When gold becomes the material of prestige, it becomes the material of power, because power must be visible. Then states arrive, and states turn symbolism into systems. A state needs taxes, armies, records, and storage. It needs to collect value and move it. Gold concentrates value into small space. It is easier to transport than grain, easier to store than cattle, easier to count than piles of mixed goods. Treasuries fill with what is compact and durable, and once a treasury values gold, gold's demand becomes structural. People need it not only to adorn, but to comply, to pay, to avoid punishment, to win favor. That is when gold's price begins to carry weight beyond beauty. There's another step, quieter but decisive: measurement. Once gold begins to appear in contracts, dowries, wages, tribute, fines, gold becomes a yardstick. And a yardstick changes everything. A yardstick turns beauty into accounting. It turns desire into obligation. It turns a metal into a unit that can be compared, promised, and collected. The next step is standardization, and this is where coinage changes everything. A coin is not merely metal. A coin is a promise about weight and purity stamped into a piece you can carry. It reduces argument. It speeds trade. It turns value into arithmetic. When you stamp a coin, you make a statement. This is worth what it claims because authority stands behind it. Gold coins compress authority into an object. That is why they are so potent. If you trust the stamp, you can trade with strangers quickly. If you do not trust the stamp, you melt the coin and trust the metal. Either way, gold remains valuable. It is one of the few monetary materials that can survive a collapse in credibility because it carries its own reputation. This also explains why gold often sits above other forms of money. Silver can be money, and in many places it was used more widely for daily trade. But gold's high value and small weight made it ideal for large payments, international trade, state reserves, tribute, and the settlement of big debts. When societies needed a metal for everyday purchases, they could use copper or silver. When they needed a metal to move serious value across distance, gold became the quiet favorite. That gives us the hidden answer to your question. Gold's power is built from two layers of trust. One layer is political trust, trust in the state's stamp. The other layer is physical trust, trust in the metal itself. When political trust is strong, gold coins move as money. When political trust weakens, gold still holds value as metal. That dual trust makes gold unusually resilient. Now consider what happens when money becomes less honest. Across history, rulers have sometimes clipped coins, mixed metals, or reduced purity to stretch resources. When that happens, people learn a lesson. Official money can lie. In response, they hold on to the thing that seems hardest to fake. Gold gains power precisely when promises become suspicious. This is why gold's story is tied to crisis. Wars, debts, inflation, and collapsing regimes do not invent gold's value, but they refresh it. In calm times, people accept paper promises easily because the system works. In panic, people return to what feels independent of the system. Gold does not depend on a bank honoring a withdrawal tomorrow. It does not depend on a minister keeping a pledge. It simply exists. That independence is a kind of that quiet strength. So, who made gold powerful? Not one king, not one merchant. It was assembled by repeated choices, repeated so long they became tradition. Craftsmen made it desirable by shaping it into objects people wanted to display. Elites made it prestigious by wearing it as a sign of rank. Temples and treasuries made it institutional by collecting it as a store of communal power. States made it practical by standardizing it into coinage, making trade faster and taxes easier. And ordinary people made it permanent by remembering, across generations, that gold outlasts the story. Because that is the final point. Gold is not powerful because it is useful for daily survival. It is powerful because humans learn to treat it as a portable memory of value, a way to carry yesterday into tomorrow without asking permission. Even the modern world keeps that habit. Central banks still hold gold, not because they plan to pay workers in gold coins, but because gold sits outside any single government's promise. It is a reserve of trust, a hedge against the possibility that trust fails somewhere else. When people say gold is a safe haven, they are really saying the same old thing in modern language. When promises look fragile, the metal feels solid. So when you ask, who named gold? You are really asking who gave it identity. The name came from what humans saw, the shining yellow metal. When you ask, who made it powerful? You're really asking who built the shared belief. The answer is, everyone who accepted it again and again until acceptance hardened into custom. Gold was not invented, it was agreed upon. It became expensive because it is scarce, durable, divisible, and recognizable. It became powerful because it solved a trust problem at the heart of trade and politics. And once a society finds a solution to a trust problem, it protects that solution, sometimes for thousands of years. That is why gold keeps returning every time a new system promises. This is safer now. Gold waits quietly in the background. It doesn't argue. It does not advertise. It simply remains what it has always been, a metal that humans decided could carry value when words could not.